The bodies of 13-year-old Shavon Randle and another person were found just a few hours ago in East Oak Cliff. Randle was last seen at her home on Wednesday. CBS 11's Jason Allen joins us now live from the scene. Jason, you've been working this overnight. What can you tell us this morning?
Yeah, good morning, Jennifer. It is the small white house that is just over my shoulder here. I'm going to let you take a look so that you can kind of get an idea of where investigators are focused this morning. Within the last 25 minutes or so, they have been bringing out bags of evidence, and you can see that they are still looking at the crime scene now, taking pictures. They have been doing that inside and outside of the house, and the medical examiner's van has just showed up. This has been the spot where they have been focused ever since they received what the FBI called, quote, significant information to look specifically here in the overnight hours.
Today, we're diving into the disturbing and heartbreaking case of Shavon Randle, a 13-year-old girl whose life was cruelly cut short in a brutal act of violence that shook the Dallas community to its core. This is the story of an innocent young girl who became the tragic victim of a web of criminal activities far beyond her control, ultimately leading to a murder that left her family and an entire city in mourning. If you're ready to be scared, then watch on further. This is a case you won't forget. Let's dive in.
Attorney Anthony Farmer, not connected to the case, explains the organized crime charge.
And it typically involves multiple criminal acts by certain individuals involved with one another.
Darius Fields, Devontae Owens, Laquan Wilkerson, and Desmond Jones all charged in organized criminal activity. Jones sentenced to 99 years in prison on those charges 2 years ago this month. Shavon Randle was kidnapped in June of 2017 after a relative's boyfriend stole 100 pounds of marijuana belonging to Darius Fields from a Lancaster hotel room. Days later, her body, along with Michael Titus, discovered in an abandoned house in East Oak Cliff.
But it is the physical evidence that was recovered as part of this investigation.
In the courtroom, mounds of evidence, photos, reports, surveillance video, more than 700 exhibits the state plans to use at trial.
Are these also fair and accurate depictions of the inside of Keist?
That's correct.
In the heart of Dallas, Texas, a 13-year-old girl named Shavon Randle lived a life much like any other young teenager. She was sweet, full of life, and loved by her family. But in June 2017, her story took a dark and tragic turn, one that would leave a permanent scar on her family and community. This is the story of how an innocent young girl became the victim of a horrifying crime, a casualty in a world of drugs, violence, and criminal enterprise. Shavon Randle was just like any other young girl her age, attending school, playing with friends, and enjoying time with her family. She was the kind of girl who brought light into any room she entered, and her family adored her. But the world she lived in was not as safe as it seemed. Her family lived in a neighborhood where the shadow of crime was ever present, a harsh reality for many families in Dallas. Despite the challenges around her, Shavon was a bright light. She had dreams and hopes for her future, dreams that were cruelly cut short. In June 2017, her life was stolen from her in the most horrifying way possible, thrusting her into a nightmare she had no part in creating. Shavon's nightmare began on June 28, 2017. Her kidnapping was not a random act of violence, but the result of a complex web of criminal activities involving drugs, robbery, and retaliation. It all started when a relative's boyfriend stole a large quantity of marijuana, 100 pounds to be exact, from a hotel room in Lancaster, Texas. The marijuana belonged to Darius Fields, a man deeply entrenched in organized criminal activities. Fields, a known figure in the Dallas drug world, was enraged by the theft. To send a message and recover his stolen drugs, he orchestrated the kidnapping of Shavon Randle, a girl who had nothing to do with the crime. Fields and his accomplices, Devontae Owens, Laquan Wilkerson, and Desmond Jones, believed that by kidnapping Shavon, they could force her family to return the stolen drugs. On that fateful day, Shavon was taken from her home, setting off a frantic search by her family and law enforcement. The Dallas community held its breath, hoping for her safe return. But as hours turned into days, hope began to fade. As the hours passed following Shavon's abduction, her fate remained uncertain. Behind the scenes, her kidnappers were orchestrating a grisly plan. Shavon, who had no knowledge of the circumstances that led to her kidnapping, was held against her will in an abandoned house, a grimy and decrepit place that would become her final resting place. The men who had taken her were ruthless and determined to recover their lost drugs by any means necessary. While negotiations and investigations were underway to locate Shavon, her captors grew increasingly paranoid and desperate. They knew that the police were closing in and the pressure was mounting. The fact that a young girl's life was in their hands seemed to mean little to these hardened criminals. The abandoned house where Shavon was held became the setting for her tragic end. It is believed that at some point, the men decided that Shavon had become a liability. The fear of being caught with her alive, combined with their growing frustration, led them to a terrifying decision. They would kill Shavon to eliminate any chance of her identifying them or providing information to the police. The sheer cruelty and cold-bloodedness of this decision underscored the dangerous and callous nature of the criminals involved. Shavon was shot 4 times, 2 of those bullets piercing her head. The brutality of the crime was shocking, even to seasoned law enforcement officers who had seen their share of violence. The young girl, who should have been planning her summer activities, was instead lying lifeless on the floor of an abandoned house, her body left to rot in the Texas heat.
Piece by piece, prosecutors are going through the physical evidence in this case.
That is a brown paper bag with red stains.
They showed pictures from the crime scene, some of them so disturbing prosecutors asked the family if they wanted to leave. Even seasoned investigators say they were disturbed by how 13-year-old Shavon Randle, only in 7th grade, was found.
The smell and the level of decomposition was such that it absolutely took my breath away.
Prosecutors say Desmond Jones is the man who helped kidnap Shavon, drove her in this white Ford to the home in Oak Cliff where she was killed.
How was it that Shavon Randle was laying?
She was laying kind of on her stomach with her head turned to the side.
As the days passed and her captors went on the run, Shavon's body remained in that abandoned house, hidden from the world. The state of her remains when they were finally discovered revealed the horrifying truth of what she had endured in her final moments. Even in death, the violence inflicted upon her was evident. The killers left her in the house, alongside the body of Michael Titus, a 19-year-old man who was also involved in the criminal underworld. Titus had been targeted for his connection to the stolen drugs, and like Shavon, his life was brutally ended in the same place. His body, too, bore the marks of a violent death, another victim in the tangled web of crime that had ensnared Shavon. Days after Shavon's abduction, on July 1, 2017, law enforcement received a tip that led them to a small, white, abandoned house in East Oak Cliff, a neighborhood known for its crime and poverty. The scene that awaited them was one of horror. Inside the house, authorities found the 2 bodies, Shavon Randle and Michael Titus. The discovery was a devastating blow to Shavon's family and the entire community. The reality of what had happened to Shavon was almost too much to bear.
They told us that when they first arrived here at the scene, they could see that there was someone injured inside the home. They went in, they found 2 bodies inside that home. They came back out, got a search warrant, and when they went back inside, they were able to positively identify one of those bodies as 13-year-old Shavon Randle. The other one is of a man, someone they have not identified, at least not publicly to us yet. Now, as late as 10 o'clock last night, police had 4 people in custody after Shavon Randle disappeared on Wednesday when somebody had called her family and said that she might be in danger. However, police were still looking for 19-year-old Michael Titus. And though they haven't said specifically if they are still looking for him this morning, they have told the Randle family in the overnight hours about this discovery.
The details of the crime were gruesome. Shavon had been shot multiple times, with 2 bullets to her head. The condition of her body indicated that she had suffered terribly before her death. Even seasoned investigators were disturbed by what they saw. The young girl, who should have been enjoying her summer vacation, was instead lying lifeless on the floor of an abandoned house.
Prosecutors showed the pictures of weapons, bullets, and other items found in several cars belonging to Jones and 3 other suspects. And experts talked about how they painstakingly processed the crime scene, searching for bullet fragments. Defense lawyers criticized the investigation because some of the bullet fragments were found only after a second search of the home, a month after Randle was found. One of the last witnesses to testify was the medical examiner who said Randle was shot 4 times. 2 of those bullets went through her head as she died almost instantly.
The house itself was a picture of neglect and decay. Dust covered the floors, and the air was thick with the stench of decomposition. The small, dilapidated structure had become a tomb for Shavon and Titus, a place where their lives were violently taken. The sheer brutality of the crime scene shocked even the most experienced law enforcement officers. Investigators carefully combed through the house, collecting evidence that would later be crucial in bringing Shavon's killers to justice. Bullet fragments were found in the walls and floors, indicating the ferocity of the shooting. Blood spatter analysis would later confirm the violent nature of the murders, providing a grim picture of Shavon's final moments. As the investigation unfolded, the depth of the criminal activities surrounding Shavon's kidnapping and murder became clear. Darius Fields and his accomplices were not just petty criminals. They were part of an organized crime syndicate involved in drug trafficking, robbery, and violence. The evidence against them was overwhelming. Over 700 exhibits were presented in court, including surveillance footage, photos, and physical evidence recovered from the crime scenes. FBI agent Jennifer Brigman, who led the evidence gathering, played a crucial role in ensuring that every piece of evidence was meticulously documented.
Also in court today, Desmond Jones's girlfriend, her identity hidden, testifying about calling police after being told her car and her boyfriend were part of Shavon's abduction.
Why did you call the police on the 30th?
That evening, his sister called me and told me they stole that little girl in your car, and I was like, "You lying?" And she was like, "No, you can look at it on the news." And so I ended up Googling it, and I just looked at the description of the car.
They stuffed that little girl in the car. That is what that witness testified to based on the information she had in that phone call. By the way, that girlfriend's car, it was driven by Desmond Jones. How do we know that? He actually is on audio tape with the FBI saying he had that car on the day that Shavon Randle was missing.
The prosecution's case was strong. They aimed to prove that Fields and his associates were involved in a larger criminal conspiracy, and that Shavon's kidnapping and murder were part of their ruthless attempts to recover the stolen drugs.
We didn't have the positive result we were looking for, but being able to let Shavon's family know that we've located her was our goal. We're going to continue our investigation, and anyone that we find that were involved in this heinous crime against Shavon, we will bring you to justice and we will hold you accountable.
Now, this does not end the investigation.
One by one, the men involved in the crime faced justice. Desmond Jones was the first to be tried. During the trial, the courtroom heard chilling testimony from witnesses, including Jones's girlfriend, who described how she discovered that Jones's car had been used in the abduction. The jury also heard from forensic experts who detailed the grim scene where Shavon's body was found. The evidence was damning, and Jones was eventually convicted of organized criminal activity and other related charges. He was sentenced to 99 years in prison, a sentence that reflected the gravity of his crimes.
The prosecution verifying that evidence through FBI agent Jennifer Brigman, who was in charge of evidence gathering at the crime scenes.
Objection to 213.
Defense attorneys Scotty Allen and Michael Levine raised objections to many of the exhibits.
It could be confusing, it could be prejudicial, it could have some sort of bias involved, and therefore the defense objected to keep that from the jury's presence.
Judge Tracy Holmes sustained some objections, overruled others, and will decide on some at trial.
A trial like this can go a long time. There's a lot of evidence, a lot of witnesses, and so it can go a long time.
Trial begins February 24th.
The trials of the other men involved in Shavon's death continued. Darius Fields, the mastermind behind the kidnapping, faced new charges of engaging in organized criminal activity, which could put him behind bars for life. Fields was already serving a lengthy sentence in federal prison for weapons charges related to the kidnapping and murder, but the state wanted to ensure he would never see the outside of a prison again.
In the Shavon Randle murder case faces a new charge. This was the case that shocked North Texas back in 2017. 13-year-old Shavon Randle was held for ransom in a drug deal and was found dead in an abandoned Oak Cliff house along with another man. No one was charged in the murders, but several people faced other charges, among them Darius Fields. He was sentenced to 18 years in prison on weapons charges. Well, the new charge is engaging in organized crime, which is a first-degree felony. He's set for trial next week.
Fields' trial was a lengthy and complex process. His defense team attempted to discredit the prosecution's evidence, arguing that some of the exhibits were prejudicial and could confuse the jury. However, the judge, Tracy Holmes, carefully considered each objection, sustaining some and overruling others. As the trial progressed, the courtroom was filled with tension. Shavon's family attended every day, seeking justice for the little girl who had been so cruelly taken from them. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence, including testimony from FBI agents, forensic experts, and other key witnesses.
A grieving mother comes face to face with a suspect connected to her daughter's murder.
Shavon Randle was kidnapped and killed in 2017. It's a story that rocked Dallas. Our Damon Fernandez has followed it from the very beginning.
They call themselves Shavon Randle's Army.
I'ma show up every time.
The teen's mother and family focused as they walked into federal court on Wednesday, preparing to face LaPortia Polly. She's the first in a group of suspects to be sentenced, all linked to the 13-year-old's kidnapping and murder.
I'm her voice. I'm her mama.
Shaquana Persley's been waiting to face those accused since June 2017. Her daughter was kidnapped from a relative's home and held for ransom in a scheme involving drugs, robbery, and money. A judge sentenced Polly to 4 years in prison on federal gun charges. Investigators say she lied to a gun dealer in order to obtain 2 weapons for Darius Fields, another suspect in Shavon's disappearance and death.
One of the most emotional moments in the trial came when the medical examiner testified about Shavon's injuries. The jury learned that Shavon had been shot 4 times, and 2 of those bullets had been fatal. The brutality of her death shocked everyone in the courtroom.
Family of 13-year-old Shavon Randle, kidnapped and killed 2 years ago, testified today in the trial of Desmond Jones. Our Steve Pickett has been in the courtroom. He's live in Dallas this evening with what was said in court today. Steve?
Doug, this particular defendant is the first of 4 who will face these trials in connection to the death of that 13-year-old. Desmond Jones is his name. This is the second day of this trial, and today he faced a woman believed to be the first target of this violence.
It's just like my little sister.
LaDoris Randle is Shavon Randle's older cousin. The 23-year-old knows the actions of her boyfriend, discussed in court today, initiated a criminal plot to abduct her. Instead, she told this jury in the case against Desmond Jones, Jones's partners in crime grabbed the 13-year-old Shavon instead, then called her on the phone with a specific threat.
And what were those threats?
We're gonna kill her if you don't bring the drugs back.
The defense argued that Fields' involvement in the murder could not be conclusively proven, but the evidence of his leadership in the criminal organization painted a clear picture. Fields was not just another player in the drug trade. He was the orchestrator of the events that led to Shavon's death. His cold and calculating nature, combined with his willingness to use violence to achieve his goals, made him a dangerous figure. Shavon's death sent shockwaves through the Dallas community. The senselessness of the crime, the innocence of the victim, and the brutality of her murder were all too much to bear. The community came together in grief, holding vigils and memorials in Shavon's honor. Shavon's family was devastated. They had lost a beloved daughter, niece, and sister in the most horrific way imaginable. The pain of their loss was compounded by the knowledge that Shavon had been targeted for something she had no part in, a victim of circumstances beyond her control. The media coverage of the case brought national attention to the violence and crime in Dallas. It also highlighted the broader issues of organized crime and the dangers that innocent people face when they become entangled in criminal activities.
It has been more than 4 years since the kidnapping and murder of 13-year-old Shavon Randle over stolen drugs that she had nothing to do with. Now the man police believe but cannot prove was behind her murder goes on trial with new charges. Darius Fields, in court, handcuffed to a walker, is already serving a long sentence in federal prison, but the state charges he's facing now could put him away for life. Fox 4's Sean Rabb was in the court for a pretrial hearing.
Darius Fields was sentenced to 18 years in federal court for weapons charges related to the kidnapping and murder of Shavon Randle and Michael Titus. Now he will face engaging in organized criminal activity charges. Fields on a walker. One of his attorneys says it's a problem with his legs as he comes to court for a pretrial hearing. He'll be the second person to face engaging in organized criminal activity in the kidnapping of 13-year-old Shavon Randle and her murder, along with Michael Titus in 2017.
In the wake of Shavon's death, local authorities vowed to crack down on organized crime and drug trafficking in the city. However, for Shavon's family, no amount of law enforcement action could bring back their beloved daughter.
They chose to take my child away from me. So it's crazy for her to just sit back and think we're supposed to take pity on her.
In court, Polly represented herself. She talked about a history of abusive boyfriends, at one point saying, quote, I first want to apologize to you, Judge, my family, and my son for the shame and embarrassment I've caused. There were no direct words to Randle's family.
She apologized for her actions, but not to me, not to my situation, not to what I'm going through. She's apologizing for selling drugs, for choosing the wrong men.
This past year and a half's been tough for Randle's loved ones.
The story of Shavon Randle is a tragic reminder of the innocent lives that are often caught in the crossfire of criminal activity. Her kidnapping and murder were the result of a ruthless and violent world that cared little for human life, particularly the life of a young girl who had her whole future ahead of her. While justice was served in the courts, with the men responsible for Shavon's death facing long prison sentences, the pain of her loss remains. Shavon Randle's story is one of innocence lost, a life cut short by the cruel actions of those who put money and power above everything else. As Dallas continues to grapple with the issues of crime and violence, Shavon's memory lives on. She is remembered not just as a victim, but as a symbol of the many innocent lives destroyed by the scourge of drugs and organized crime. Her story is a haunting reminder of the dark realities that lurk beneath the surface of our communities and the ongoing struggle to protect the innocent from harm. So, what are your thoughts on Shavon's case? Were Desmond's punishments harsh enough? Should he have faced the death penalty? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, everyone, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content.